Crockett leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp, piercing the room like a laser. "Mr. Trump, can you explain why there were such large gaps in the valuation of your foreign assets in your 2019 and 2020 disclosures?" It was a direct hit, nothing extraneous, just the facts. Trump looked up, a smirk on his face, as if he were itching for a fight. He leaned back calm as ever and fired back. "I've been more transparent than anyone in this room, and frankly, your tone, that was disrespectful." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras panned in. Even the C-SPAN live chat began to erupt. But Crockett, she didn't budge an inch. "Respect isn't a tone, Mr. Trump," she said, cold as ice. "It's earned." The room buzzed, sensing the rising heat. Then Trump waved her off, as if she were nothing more than an annoying fly. With the bold confidence of a man who rarely faced consequences for his words, he stared at her and dropped the bomb. "Sit down, girl." The words landed heavily, like a brick breaking glass. The room didn't just gasp, it froze. Dead silence. The chairman's gavel hovered half-raised, as if he weren't sure whether to strike it or just soak in the shock. Aides stopped mid-bang. Some Republicans cast their eyes down. Others raised their eyebrows in disbelief. But no one dared to speak. All eyes were on Crockett, waiting, wondering. Would she collapse? Would she explode? No, not this woman. She blinked once, then twice, letting the ugly phrase hang in the air like a dark cloud. It was like watching someone walk through a minefield, each second heavier, more dangerous. Then, with a grace that could have stopped time, she adjusted the mic, leaned forward, and looked at him, not with anger, but with a sharp clarity that could have cut steel. Imagine a room so tense you could cut the air with a knife. "We're in the heart of Washington, D.C., inside a House Oversight Committee hearing on federal transparency. It's been a grueling 5 hours, reporters hunched over their phones, aides whispering, and bright overhead lights blaring like a warning. Everyone knows something's about to explode. At the center of it all is Donald J. Trump, cool as a starved shark in his signature Navy suit and red tie, shuffling through papers as if he owns the world. He's a man who has never had to answer to anyone, let alone a fierce black congresswoman from South Dallas who dislikes clutter. Across from him, sharp as a knife in a cobalt blazer and dark glasses, is Representative Jasmine Crockett. Her gaze remained on him, unwavering, as she adjusted her microphone. "This, my friends, was where the storm broke out." Crockett leaned forward, her voice calm, but sharp, piercing the room like a laser. "Mr. Trump, can you explain why there were such large gaps in the valuation of your foreign assets in your 2019 and 2020 disclosures?" It was a direct hit, nothing extraneous, just the facts. Trump looked up, a smirk on his face, as if he were itching for a fight. He leaned back calm as ever and fired back. "I've been more transparent than anyone in this room, and frankly, your tone, that was disrespectful." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras panned in. Even the C-SPAN live chat began to erupt. But Crockett, she didn't budge an inch. "Respect isn't a tone, Mr. Trump," she said, cold as ice. "It's earned." The room buzzed, sensing the rising heat. Then Trump waved her off, as if she were nothing more than an annoying fly. With the bold confidence of a man who rarely faced consequences for his words, he stared at her and dropped the bomb. "Sit down, girl." The words landed heavily, like a brick breaking glass. The room didn't just gasp, it froze. Dead silence. The chairman's gavel hovered half-raised, as if he weren't sure whether to strike it or just soak in the shock. Aides stopped mid-bang. Some Republicans cast their eyes down. Others raised their eyebrows in disbelief. But no one dared to speak. All eyes were on Crockett, waiting, wondering. Would she collapse? Would she explode? No, not this woman. She blinked once, then twice, letting the ugly phrase hang in the air like a dark cloud. It was like watching someone walk through a minefield, each second heavier, more dangerous. Then, with a grace that could have stopped time, she adjusted the mic, leaned forward, and looked at him, not with anger, but with a sharp clarity that could have cut steel. "Let me explain something to you, Mr. Trump." She began, her voice soft, careful each word. A carefully calculated blow. "You may have talked to a lot of women like that in your life, but I'm not here to serve you. I'm here to serve the truth. So if my question makes you uncomfortable, perhaps that says more about your answer than it does about my tone." The silence was thick, hanging over the room in a tight grip. A staffer behind her whispered, "Fuck." Crockett wasn't done. "And one more thing," she continued, unflinching, her gaze never wavering. "Your inability to deal with the truth without resorting to contemptuous language is not strength, it's evasion. And you won't be eluding me today." Trump had none. He tapped his pen on the table, his mouth opening and closing, trying to find a response but failing. His usual swagger, gone. His crooked smile, gone. Finally, the chairman stammered, "Mr. Trump, please answer the question." But the agenda had been hijacked. The issue was no longer about tax returns or foreign assets. The issue was about power. Someone who still thought they could wield it with impunity, and someone willing to stand up and say, "Not under my authority." Trump muttered, barely audible, "I'm just saying there's a way to talk to people." But the mood had changed. Now, all eyes were on him, and for the first time, he looked uncomfortable, maybe even confused, as if someone had just thrown a bucket of cold water in his face without him even realizing it. In the media booth, producers at CNN and MSNBC were going crazy. "Cut it. It's going to go viral," one barked. And they weren't wrong. Within 15 minutes, the exchange, "Sit down, girl," and Crockett's razor-sharp response had been clipped, shared, captioned, and replayed on Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok. The phrase was trending worldwide in less than an hour, but not for the reason Trump might have thought. In Fort Worth, an elderly woman stopped ironing, watched the clip with wide eyes, shaking her head. "God have mercy," she whispered. That girl just told him. Across America, from bars in Columbus, Ohio, to college dorms in Tempe, Arizona, people were glued to their screens, texting friends, replaying the moment. "Did he really just say that?" a teacher muttered. Her friend nodded. She handled it like a sniper, cool, decisive. Crockett didn't raise her voice, didn't slam her fist on the ground, didn't even lean back in her chair. She just sat there, calm as ever, flipping to the next page, as if Trump's attempt to belittle her was just a passing breeze. But everyone in that room understood this wasn't just a fight. It was something deeper, something raw. It was recognition. Representative Monica Rayburn, 2 seats away, exhaled slowly, murmured, "That's how you solve problems." Across the aisle, Representative Neil Camden scribbled in a notebook, whispered to an aide, "She just turned this room upside down." Trump's smirk was history. His usual showmanship was gone. He looked frustrated, maybe lost, as if someone had just waved a hand at him in a language he couldn't understand. Outside the Capitol, news trucks had begun tweaking their banners. "Trump tells Representative Crockett to sit down, girl," during fiery clash. Cable newsrooms were in chaos, producers shouting into headsets, "Cut the budget, go with Crockett, get the whole clip in." Living rooms across the country, people were rewinding, sharing, texting colleagues. The moment was electrifying, spreading like wildfire. By evening, Crockett's communications director, Kiara Owens, checked her phone and almost dropped it. More than 2 million views in just 4 hours. Hashtags were trending, celebrities were quoting her, civil rights leaders were begging for interviews. Kiara turned to Crockett, who was quietly working on a file on her desk. "They call this the quote of the decade, you know. That right?" Crockett didn't even look up. "They can call it whatever they want. I call it Tuesday." But let's step back a bit, because this isn't just a viral moment. This is about Jasmine Crockett deep down. Before the cameras, before the trending hashtags, she was just Jasmine from St. Louis, Missouri. Her mom worked the night shift at a health clinic. Her dad drove the school bus without a day off. She grew up in a house where you didn't open your mouth unless you had something worthwhile to say. And when you did, you meant it. She wasn't the loudest kid in school, but she had a way of making teachers stop and listen. Her classmates used to joke, "Jasmine doesn't argue, she cross-examines." At 16, she volunteered at the municipal courthouse just to hear the voice of truth when it had nowhere else to hide. That's where her fire began. Her path to politics began in a Texarkana, Texas courthouse, fresh out of law school, when she took on a case no one else wanted. A young man who had been wrongly arrested, held for days without charge, with no money to hire a lawyer. The city wanted to sweep the case under the rug, but what about Crockett? She stayed up 2 nights straight, digging through files, finding holes in police reports, tracking down ignored witnesses. When she presented her case in court, the judge stopped her mid-sentence and said, "Miss Crockett, are you sure you're fresh out of school?" She smiled. Only on paper. She won in less than an hour. Word spread. That's how she rolled. Quiet wins with great impact. Over the next 5 years, she became the go-to person for families with nowhere else to turn: police misconduct, land disputes, evictions. She took on pro bono cases when necessary, struggling to make ends meet on the ones she could charge. By the time she ran for state legislature, she was not only known, she was trusted. She didn't talk like a politician. She talked like someone who had sat at the kitchen table of people without lobbyists. That mattered. When she won her seat in the Texas House, they told her to play it safe, to learn how to play. She did the opposite. In her first year, she wrote a bill to combat police brutality during protests. The bill didn't pass, but the hearings attracted national attention. That's when C-SPAN viewers first saw her calmly spoken hair, pulled back, surrounded by men twice her age, who couldn't get her to budge. Party leaders in D.C. began watching clips of her on mute just to study her steel. She didn't blink, didn't fidget, didn't smile unless it was genuine. When she ran for Congress, it wasn't ambition, it was size. She wanted a bigger desk because she was tired of shouting from the hallways. After she won, she sent her mother a note. "You told me to make my voice count. I found a bigger mic." So when Trump told her to sit down, girl, in front of the world, she wasn't shocked. She'd heard worse from judges, cops, developers who thought she was an assistant. But she knew millions were watching girls who looked like her, women who had been dismissed with lazy disrespect for decades. She didn't need to scream or walk away. She did what she always did: cut straight to the truth and let it stand. Behind closed doors, after the hearings ended at 5:30 p.m., the chaos really erupted. Aides scrambled to pack up files. Reporters hunted for off-the-cuff comments as members slipped out. Security pushed Trump out a side door, shielding him from the growing crowd of journalists on the Capitol steps. Crockett gathered her papers, not rushing, not dragging, just standing. A junior staffer handed her water. She nodded and headed down the hall. She didn't say a word about the moment, but everyone around her was buzzing. Down the hall, Representative Lane Brewster whispered into her phone, "I heard it live." No, she didn't flinch. Yes, he really said it. 2 floors down in the press room. Chaos, dozens of journalists jostling for quotes, tweets flying every second. "Need confirmation that Trump said girl on the recording. Has Crockett spoken yet? Is she on MSNBC tonight?" In a private office off the floor, Trump was fuming. "That woman is so rude," he barked at an advisor. "I'm answering the damn question." The advisors fell silent as PR strategists huddled by the window, arguing about damage control. "Make it a joke," one suggested. No, her tone was too serious. "Make it a joke, will look worse," another countered. An aide muttered, "Should have seen it coming. She has a mouth like a judge." Trump looked up. What the aide clarified: "She's not taking the bait. She's waiting for you to hang yourself." Meanwhile, in Crockett's office, Kiara paced back and forth, her phone ringing. CNN, MSNBC, even the BBC wanted a piece. Crockett sipped her water, unfazed. "Are you okay?" Kiara asked. "I'm fine," she replied. "We didn't come here for a moment. We came to ask questions." But even she knew things were more serious now. Outside, protesters gathered with "Respect Black Women" signs. Etsy had shirts with her quote. A reporter caught her leaving. "Congressman Crockett, do you feel disrespected?" She paused, slowed down, and said, "I feel focused." The clip alone made morning show headlines. Conservative groups were in a frenzy. Talk radio repeated the exchange, declaring Trump's tone slangy. The host barked, "What about her attitude?" But it didn't last. The problem wasn't the tone, it was the stereotype. Progressive voices responded. "Black women don't have bad days. They're told to sit down, regardless of their qualifications," one commenter wrote. Crockett's inbox was flooded with emails, support, hate, and crude stories. One email stood out: "You didn't say anything. You didn't back down. You didn't blink. My daughter asked for your name. That means something. Thank you." She read it 3 times. By nightfall, the Trump media machine was in full swing. They knew the clip was going viral, but they weren't going to let the story go down without a fight. In an office in Arlington, strategists watched the exchange for the 15th time. "She didn't scream. She didn't get emotional." "That makes it harder," one said. "Reverse it. Say he's normal." "She misunderstood," another suggested. An intern chimed in. "But it doesn't sound normal." Silence. Trump, watching from Mar-a-Lago, grumbled, "They'll forget in a week. We need something bigger to bury it." What was the plan? Distract, discredit, double down. Allies tweeted in support of Trump's frankness. "This isn't insulting, it's political theater." One senator tweeted, "Crockett knows how to play the camera." A pundit added, "This is what happens when you can't talk without someone screaming about racism." The next morning, Trump appeared on a conservative radio show in Palm Springs, chuckling, "Regret no. I'm in for a long hearing. She keeps talking. People are too sensitive." He grinned like it was a checkmate, but the damage was done. Crockett remained silent. After her "I feel focused" comment, her silence spoke louder than any press release. That night, CBS analyst Trevor Langford got it right. This isn't about a quote, it's about a habit. A man who's been in power for decades still talking, like power justifies everything. The Texas News broadcast, "Who is Jasmine Crockett?" featured her journey, Her tenacity in the courtroom. Viewers who had never heard her name were captivated. Her team was busy. The Today Show, CNN, NPR, even the late-night shows were calling. But Crockett was picky. It's about what he said, but also how I responded. That's important, she told her team. Online, the attacks mounted fake quotes, edited clips that labeled her hostile. They racked up views in far-right corners. But the real story remained the same. For every fake video, 5 real ones showed her calm, precise, and unflinchingly dismissive. By day 3, the story had gone viral. Morning shows were spinning one way. Late-night comedy shows were spinning another. College professors were dissecting it in ethics classes. Conservative hosts were screaming weaponized identity politics. Progressives were calling it overdue accountability. But amid the noise, something changed. People started listening. It wasn't about policy or Trump anymore. It was about that moment, that line, what it represented. In Birmingham, Alabama, debate coach Lorraine Reeves played the clip to her students. "What do you see?" she asked. He didn't expect her to say that, one girl said. He thought she wouldn't say anything, added another. The room nodded. In Des Moines, Iowa, a 76-year-old librarian's viral Facebook post read, "This isn't about left or right. It's about whether we let the power speak down to the people who belong in the room." The post was shared 20,000 times. In Phoenix, a tearful mother explained in a video, "My daughter will grow up knowing that line," and how to respond. Social media celebrated Crockett as an icon. Black women quoted her on Instagram. Young girls posted pictures of her alongside barrier-breaking icons. Twitter threads analyzed "Sit Down Girl" as a case study in power dynamics. A group of women in Spokane, Washington, sent 300 handwritten thank you notes. Polls showed a rare surge in approval for Crockett. Across party lines, 40% of independents wanted to hear her talk about policy. In private, she remained composed, joking with her father on the phone. "You sound just like Mom," he said. "She'll throw her shoes," Crockett chuckled. "No," he replied. "She'll make me give them back first." It was a moment of relief in a heavy week. 3 days after the hearing, a conversation erupted that went beyond Trump and Crockett, touching corners that cable news missed. It was about being heard when you're not the expected voice. In Boulder, Colorado, Professor Shelby Gaines replayed Crockett's response, circling truth on the board. "It's calmness, next to strength," she said. A student asked, "Why did it go viral?" He said, "Worse." Gaines nodded. "It's the context, the person being talked about, and the person refusing." They told her to sit down, but she sat in her truth. That was protest. At a nearby coffee shop, regulars argued. She wasn't making a statement, she was setting an example, one said. "Why not clap harder?" another asked. A man shot back. "She doesn't have to speak louder to be powerful." The stories kept coming. Women, especially Black women, shared that they were dismissed in meetings called girls by less qualified men. An El Paso vice principal recalled hearing it 5 times, always from suits. A Portland finance director wrote an editorial, "I was told, 'Calm down, girl,' in a budget meeting. I'm the CFO." It wasn't a new anger. It was an old exhaustion with words. Crockett didn't play the star declining major interviews. When a local reporter in Austin asked if Trump intended to be disrespectful, she replied, "The intention is less important than the impact. If someone doesn't understand the weight of their words, they probably shouldn't be speaking them in public." That's profound.